everyone. And today we're talking with somebody very special. We're talking with Will Gries. He's a principal PM in Azure Storage. And today we're going to talk about Azure File Provisioned V2 billing, or whatever that means. How you doing, Will?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Can you explain to me exactly what that is?
Yeah, sure. So the Provision V2 billing model is our latest billing model for Azure Files. We called it Provision V2. It's a very Microsoft name because it's our second model that is a provision model. So originally we had the pay-as-you-go model for Azure
Yep.
Files, and then the Provision V1 model was introduced a few years ago. This model is the latest and greatest.
Okay, so if I'm sure there's a lot more to it than just like the
Of
plus one
course.
and the version number. So what kind of benefits can customers expect from that?
Yeah, so the big thing that we did unique with the Provision V2 model is that we made it possible to provision storage, IOPS, and throughput independently. So before with the V1 model, when you provisioned your storage, that dictated what the IOPS and throughput that you got were. And for some customers that works great, but for other customers, they need a lot more IOPS or a lot more throughput, or even a lot less IOPS and throughput, which meant that to get to those levels, they had to provision more storage than what was allowed by the system. So the Provision V2 model brings a lot of flexibility in that. And then, of course, with that flexibility, you're getting the additional cost savings associated with that.
Okay, so I don't have to over provision on size because I'm looking for a specific IOPS profile,
That's right.
therefore saving me money.
That's right. So if you had a IOPS hungry workload,
Yep.
like a great example of this would be like if you're running a database or if you're running something like SAP on your file share, you might actually want a lot more IOPS than what you would get for the amount of storage that you would normally provision. So this enables you to provision the storage that you want with the exact IOPS and throughput that you want. Exactly.
Okay, and what's the main cost that customers are going to be like impacted? That is it going to be like, is there a specific, because you say that we're provisioning them separately, does that mean there's cost model for both, or how does that
Yeah,
work?
so let's go ahead and look at the pricing page, and I think we can answer that question.
Perfect.
So I want to here's the pricing page. I'll just scroll
Yep.
up to the top. And so if you scroll down here, we can go to the Provision V2 section. It's the very first. And you're going to see basically three main pricing categories. The provision storage pricing, the provision IOPS pricing, and the provision throughput pricing. And I want to also highlight something that we're doing for the first time with the Provision V2 model, which is that we have pricing in this model for both SSD and HDD. So historically, we had two separate models. The SSD pricing was only available in the V1 model, and the HDD pricing was only available in our pay-as-you-go model. So now we have a consistent model with the sort of three main price points for storage, IOPS, and throughput. And whatever you provision, then you'll be charged against these three price points.
So that gives our customers like a lot more flexibility into how they design and how they allocate their resources.
Absolutely. So, this gives you the flexibility to be able to say, I want to right size my share to whatever workload I'm using.
Oh yeah. So how do the customers like physically, practically, when you're setting up your storage, do you say, I want this amount of space, I want this amount of IOPS, I want this amount of, like, how does that work? Like, how do you provision that storage for the
Yeah,
customer?
let's go through and actually take a look at how you would do this. So before we actually get to the provisioning, I want to show here just the options that you would have at the storage account level to get to a provisioned V2 file share.
Okay.
So first, when I deploy my storage account, I will select Azure Files under the primary service. And that's what unlocks the provisioned V2 model. So after I've selected this, the next question that I get is if I want an HDD or an SSD. So historically, we've called HDD standard. That's the terminology within the storage account, and SSD premium. So if, for example, I want an SSD file share, I would select premium, and that unlocks further choice here between the provision V1 model and the provision V2 model. So I'll just go ahead and select provision V2. So I've actually already created a storage account, so we don't need to go through that process. So let's then take a look at actually creating the file share inside of that. So here is the new file share experience for provision V2. In this, I'm sort of asked the basic thing, the name of the file share. So I can just say test share. I start with a recommendation on how much storage to provision. So in this example, why don't I just provision 10 terabytes? And based on what I have provisioned, I get a recommendation for IOPS and throughput. So you see that here, and a recommendation of just over 13,000 for IOPS and just over 1,000 MIB per second for throughput. So then if I want to, I can go and I can actually increase this or decrease this. So say I had a workload that's more geared towards like doing hot archive kind of workload. So we have customers that do this, believe it or not, with SSD that want to basically have the low latency access to the data, but don't need to drive a lot of IOPS and maybe don't even access the data that frequently, but they want it to be fast when they do. So in this case, I might actually downsize my IOPS. Let's say I set to 5,000, or I can downsize my throughput. Let's say set to 500. In other cases, like I gave the database case, I might say, well, actually, I want a lot less storage. Maybe I only need, 250 gigs, but I actually want, 15,000 IOPS here, and I want, a gig a second of throughput. So I can go provision that as well.
So really, you've got capabilities now to really fine tune your storage to match the workload, whether it's archiving, database, something that is like a lot of random access or a lot of like sequential access and so on. So you can really match it to what you need.
That's right. One other thing that I wanted to highlight here, the aspect of the provision V2 model, which is brand new, is the support for SSD file shares. That is very recently released. We've had for a few months since October 2024 the ability to do on HDD, and that's also a great option for customers. And I think in particular, one thing I wanted to highlight is the cost predictability of the provision V2 model. So whether you're doing SSD or HDD, you're getting a very predictable price experience. And if I can just flip back to the pricing page, it really is as simple as whatever you provision multiplied by these price points, that's what you're going to pay. So we've taken a lot of the unpredictability around transactions and the pay-as-you-go model out of the equation totally.
Oh, that's perfect, because that was going to be my next question, is because now that we have multiple ways of like configuring it, how do customers keep an eye on their spendings for that model?
Yeah. So absolutely, from the perspective of being able to predict your cost even before you do an Azure File Share deployment, and then after you've done the Azure File Share deployment, that you can see that the cost matches what it's supposed to. I think one other thing to point out here is we're giving you a lot of new insights into your data as well. So maybe I will go and just deploy this file share just for the sake of the demo. I'll remove the backup and hit create. And now that I have the file share in place, I can actually go and take a look at the metrics for the file share. Now, since this is a brand new file share, it's empty. I actually haven't done any IOPS against it.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to highlight is that we give you the ability to look at things like the max IOPS that the file share is doing and the max throughput or bandwidth that the file share is doing. And you can actually plot those against the provisioned throughput or bandwidth and the provisioned IOPS as well. So that enables you then, after you've done that, to say, am I actually, I provision, let's say 15,000 IOPS, am I actually using all 15,000? And if you're not, actually downsize, right size, and get to the sort of cost efficient way of sizing your share.
So you don't like, because there are models like that where if you set it too big, well, too bad. If you want to change it, you have to basically move the data off, change it, create a new one, and then move the data back in. So this, you can go back if your original estimates weren't quite up to par. You can go back and edit
That's right.
adjust.
That's absolutely right. You can edit this. You can actually edit it up and down. So that is something that is not every solution provider has, but we can upsize or downsize. Now, there are some limitations on how often you can downsize. You can upsize as much as you want to.
Okay.
So you can downsize once per day, but that gives you a lot of flexibility. So just comparing that to what you would do with an on-premises file server or NAS device, if you sort of make a mistake in pricing out your appliance and buy the wrong thing, you have to make a tough choice to either deal with the consequences of not having the performance and capability that you need, or going and buying a new appliance. So with Azure Files, we completely solve that sort of unpredictability problem for you.
Okay. So if your company has like your workload, but it has a really well-defined seasonality. So for example, like at the end, the last week of the month, the need goes through the roof, and then first week of the month, it comes back down.
Yes, you
So
can
could
go and
you
resize that share.
You could automate at the beginning, like just before that week starts, to like pump up your metrics, and then after it's done, to pump them back down, and that would be allowed and okay.
Yes, if you want to, for a period of a few days or a week or even for a few months, upsize your share, you're doing some job that does lots of IOPS and throughput on your share, you can do that. And then after that period is done, you can downsize. So I think the place that we see this most often is when customers are doing things like migrations.
Yep.
That, hey, I'm going to be doing a lot over this period, and then I'm going to come back down to earth and kind of do my steady state. But those scenarios that you describe where, I'm selling something, I have a busy period, and then I have a not busy period, you can absolutely do that. The only real limitation on this is the ability to only do the resize down once per day.
Yeah. No, it would make very little sense to do it like on an hourly basis.
Yeah. Yep.
So once a day is great. I'm very happy to see like all the benefits that the customers can get from that. Now, if if our customers are currently in a V1 provisioned environment, is there a path to V2, or do they have to like reset everything?
Yeah. So today, the way that you would do this is doing a manual migration using a tool like AZ Copy, which is the Azure copy tool, or using a tool like RoboCopy. I think generally in this kind of a case, we would recommend something like AZ Copy,
Mm-hmm.
just for the additional performance that you're going to get from copying between two file shares that are both in Azure. But really, however you want to move the data over to the share, you can do. In the future, we would like to do more automated ways of doing this, so that you could just click a button in the portal. That's not something that we support today.
Okay, but it is on the roadmap.
It's on the roadmap. Yep.
Perfect. Well, Will, this was fantastic and eye-opening. I had read a few things about like provision V2 billing model, but I really never had the chance to kind of like drill into it to figure out what the value proposition was, and you've explained it really, really well. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, obviously, we are super excited about this, and hope this solves a lot of our sort of pain points. And we're excited to see all the cool things that folks can do with these new file shares.
Yes, absolutely. And for you, if you're watching this right now, please like and subscribe. But if you have questions and you want to like further the conversation, just feel free to add stuff in the comments, and we'll get to it. I'll make sure that Will gets the questions so we can answer them for you. And with
We'll
that
be
being
happy
said,
to.
thank you so much for Will for spending the time with me. Thank you at home for listening, and we'll see you later.
Thank you.